I became a voice actor out of fear. Yeah, all of you are giving me like weird puzzled looks like what? What? Okay, so basically when I was younger, my brother rented a movie called Office Space from Blockbuster. Have you ever heard or seen the movie Office Space? No. It's like a dark satire on like office culture, right? And like people going to dead end jobs and you know, having a soul crushing experience, right? And but the thing is, like, you know, it's supposed to be a comedy, but to me it was a horror film because whatever was on screen for that movie, I saw my brother directly like on that, and I was like, oh my god, it's real. Like, because he was at a startup job at the time, like a startup tech company, and like it was going nowhere, and he was miserable, and like he would just come back and drown his sorrows in video games or whatever else. And so that scared me, and I realized, oh, if I just kind of go through life, I'm gonna end up doing that. So from a very young age, I was very determined to find and figure out what I wanted to do in life. And I started off with like trying to figure out if it was writing, if it was like law, if it was art, video game design, etc., etc. I went through like a whole litany of things for like a long time. Let's just put it that way. But senior year of my high school, like summer senior year, I talked to my cousin who was an editor in Hollywood, and like I was like, I'm stumped. I still have no clue what I want to do. And he was like, well, try to figure out like what the commonalities, like the common thread is between all of that stuff, and try picking something from there. And I realized all the things that I had done thus far were linked to one point, which was my childhood, playing video games, watching TV, cartoons, etc., etc. And I was like, okay, so what was the most fun I had as a kid? And, you know, it occurred to me, oh, playing pretend, duh. Like, everyone played pretend when they were younger.
Yeah.
And that was the most fun you ever had in your life, like, unadulterated. Right? And I was like, okay, what if I, you know, play pretend? What if I was a voice actor? So I'm from the Bay Area, so I was in San Jose, and I found a place in San Francisco, which is like 45-minute train ride away, to a voiceover conservatory. And they had an intro class, and I took it. And the moment I stepped in front of the mic, I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. So that's how I knew. For anime, it's weird. So as I was growing up, like I did performance. I never thought to be an actor though. I always did performance, you know, like summer camps and community theater and all that sort of stuff. I partook. I don't know. I participated in activities, you know, like just for fun, because I was like, you know, like I'm extroverted, so I enjoy that sort of like energy. But I didn't connect the two as like, oh, I can make money off of that. But also, I grew up in a very, very Asian, like heavily populated, like Asian population. So like I grew up with anime. I didn't even know that was anything but a cartoon. I didn't know it was called anime. So I grew up with it, but weirdly enough, I didn't want to do anime as a career. I had no intention of going into anime. I wanted to do commercials, which I do, but not as prolifically as I do anime these days. I actually, because I was told, you know, early on, don't do anime, don't do dubbing. Like it is the cheapest pay for the hardest technical work in voiceover. It's not worth it. And I was given that advice, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just run with that. But, you know, like, there was a girl I liked. Oh, man. And she was coming into town to go to AX, Anime Expo. Do you remember conventions? God, I miss those.
I miss those too.
Yeah.
Please.
But this was like AX 2012, I think. so like 2012, and like this girl was, girl was coming into town, and like she was like, oh my god, I want to do Anime Expo Idol, which by the way, until they had until 2011. 2012 was the first year they stopped doing that. And I remember, because I was like, okay, like sign up. I'll root, I'll root for you. I'll cheer you on. And she's like, but I only want to do it if you do it with me. And she was like really egging me on, and I really liked her.
So you're like, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah. And I was really lonely. No, I'm joking. But jokes aside though, right? Like, I went, and like I had a monologue, and I was like, look, I don't really care to do this. Like, this is not my forte. But she's like, you should do it anyway. So we went, and turns out they didn't have Anime Expo Idol anymore. They had general auditions, which was basically a way to like appease like angry fans for the cancellation of Anime Expo Idol. And I the thing that they had was you could do like a performance in front of Tony Oliver or Mami Okada, and if they like you, they'll take your information, and then they'll put you in their system, and that's what it is, a general audition. So or like an public open audition, or whatever they called it. And so like I got there, and like she was in front of me, and I was like, I'm getting nervous, this is weird. And like she went, and I completely didn't see her perform because I was so in my own zone. Yeah. Which is horrible. But like I was like, yeah, you did great, like afterwards. And then I went, and there in front of me was Tony Oliver, who did Power Rangers, like it was just, I was like, what am I doing here? This is so weird. And he's like, all right, you're gonna play this character in 3, 2, 1, go. And I did it, and I don't remember what I did, but at the end of it, he was just like, because he was giving like notes, right, like to people to like have them do like a second read. He just looked at me, and he's like, I got nothing for you. All right, let's get you off the stage and have someone else come up. And I was like, wait, that's it? Like, nothing?
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I was almost insulted, because I was like, nothing? Like, so I went over to the booth that was like, that they were selling classes at, and I met someone named Dora Fine, who's Tony's assistant. And she's like, you're really good at this, and like, you should be taking class, you should be in anime. And I'm like, no, thank you. But somehow she convinced me to take the class, and I'm like, okay, all right, it's another skill set, I should just do it. So I went to the class. At the class, Tony pulled me aside, and he was like, you're really good at this, I'm gonna try and get you in to get like a general audition in front of the casting director. And then I did, and I was, and then like 9 months later, they gave me my first audition, which was for a show called Gargantia. And that was my first audition with them, and I booked it. And then it just happened, things just happened. So yeah, I literally just stumbled into it, even though I was literally actively trying to get away from it. Oh my goodness. It's a little different now because of a pandemic we're going through. God, that's gonna date this video so hard. So usually, for me, I'll wake up, like 7 or 8, eat breakfast, get ready for the day. If I have like the earliest I work is like 9 o'clock. So usually they'll give me a 9 o'clock session, because why not? Alan can do it. So they'll give me that, and then I'll go through it, and then I'll also go through my emails throughout the day while sending out paperwork and stuff like that. And I'll get a bunch of auditions from my agent, and then I'll like put that in my system, and between sessions, when I have a break, I'll do auditions. And if I'm not doing auditions, or if I don't have like a full day of recording, I'll watch stuff, be it like a YouTube like video game cutscene movie, or like go to Netflix or go to Disney Plus or whatever it is, and I'll watch stuff. Because I'm always, I don't know, it's a weird habit of mine to just be like, well, this is my job, so I gotta stay sharp, and I watch stuff that interests me. I don't watch stuff that's just like, oh yeah, this is purely for research. I watch stuff that interests me, because if you're more interested, then you gravitate towards it, and you find stuff naturally. But yeah, and then that's basically rinse and repeat, like just day in, day out, do auditions. Hopefully you book something. And I think at the height of it all, I had like 10 commitments and like 10 projects that I was like juggling simultaneously. So it depends on the workload, but like the ratio will differ, from day to day. But it's record, get out of the booth, like watch something, go back in, do an audition afterwards, and then it's dinner time. Who inspires me? I mean, like, there are people I look up to. There are people who have like diligent work ethic that like I'm just like, yeah, that's exactly what I should be doing. Just to name a few. I mean, like, some of them are colleagues, some of them I've never met, some of them are like people who inspire me for one reason or another on social media. But if I had to like pick like 3, I'd probably say like for like work, it'd be like Johnny Young Bosch probably. He inspires me. His performance inspires me. And like, I don't know, it's just he's just the best. Like there's no, like, even though he doesn't have like the most credits in the industry, he doesn't have like the broadest range. He plays like one archetype and maybe a few adjacent ones, but there's something about his performance that like I can't put words to. And like I've been trying to figure out for the last God knows how long I've been doing this. But like, it's just every time I watch one of his performances, it's fresh, it's engaging, and like I aspire to be like that. But like I'm my own person, so I have to find like a balance between that. But performance-wise, Johnny's probably the one I look up to. The second person I like look up to, or like someone who inspires me, is a person named Xanthe Huynh. If she's in Persona, she's in Fooly Cooly, she's in Maquia, she's in like a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, I would say, like just knowing her personally, like her story and like the way that she has to navigate through like her career inspires me. I'm not going to go into details because they're not mine to give out, but like she's someone I looked up to, she's someone I look up to. Yeah, something like that. What's funny is that I feel like it's a mix between just everything, right? Because and hear me out. Like, as an actor, right? Like your job is to, well, I mean, I would say that your job is to lie. Like we're professional liars. That's what it comes down to, right? Like I have to convince you that the thing that I'm holding that doesn't actually exist exists, right? But the only way that you can convey that truth is by experiencing life. I think the biggest thing that I would like that I took away from like a mentor of mine was find something outside of voice acting and acting, because that's the thing that's going to, like, that's the real fuel. That's like the stuff, that's your real ammunition. It's the life experiences, because if you don't experience it in life, how are you going to convey that truthfully? It's never happened to you, right? If you've never fallen in love, how can you profess your love in a scene when you don't know how that, like, when you don't know how that feels? So it's the moments outside of my acting that like that really impact me. Be it like death in the family, be it like a breakthrough in my career, be it like falling in love, etc., etc. But I like, so it's a split between that, and I would probably say the other thing is struggling. Honestly, struggling. Like kind of, like hitting your face, like hitting the floor face first in life, because you learn to appreciate the smaller things in life. It's when you're like acclimated to like noticing the smaller details because you appreciate it more. You begin to notice things in performance that involve like smaller details, like the subtleties of life and stuff like that. So you can use that as a tool when you're acting. And I think I enjoy incorporating a lot of subtleties, within my own performance. But yeah, it's the small things in life. I would say the biggest challenge so far in my strictly in career is visibility. Putting myself out there. I tend to forget to do that. My girlfriend harps on me to be more active on social media, which I am woefully, underutilizing. Yeah, I mean, visibility, part of it's a, what do they call it? They call it like a social industry where you have to you have to have presence there. And if you're not doing anything because you don't care for it like I do, no one's gonna know who you are. So you might be a great voice actor and still only have 900 followers, right? There are people like that, and there are people, because social media is an interesting game, and I have some problems with it personally, but I understand its role in it, in our in our industry, and I wish I was better at that. And I feel like a lot of people kind of pass me by in terms of being like, oh yeah, I love this voice actor, or I know about this voice actor, because I'm not out there as much. So I'll see all my peers who have literally tens of thousands of followers. Meanwhile, I'm close to 2,000 now thanks to my girlfriend, but I used to have 500 last year. That visibility sometimes will book you a job, right? Studios will look at oh, how many followers does this person have? And if it's between two people and they're like, oh, I like both performances, who's this person versus who's this person? If that person's much more well known, they'll go for that person because they're both good at the job. But it's just plus benefits. So yeah, staying active in social media.
Yeah, it can be really difficult, I know, because sometimes I realize I haven't posted anything in 2 years. It's whoa.
Here's the thing, I don't I created my Instagram account during the pandemic, but I'm not allowed to go out because quarantine. What am I supposed to take pictures of? I took pictures of my booth and a breakfast I made, and I was like, this is sad. There's only so much real estate I can show. Oh, here's a corner of my booth. That's what that looks like. and then I'm just I don't want to be a food blogger. I feel weird doing that. And I don't know. I wanted to go out, and I also don't like the idea of a boothie because it's the same thing over and over again. It says, hey, I'm in these weird giant headphones in front of a mic. I'm doing my job. I look at that and I'm just do your job. Don't do that. The number one role that I am proud of most is playing Makoto Edamame Edamura from Great Pretender. That role changed me. That role was lightning in a bottle for me, for multiple reasons. Mostly because it's an anime that I did while in the early stages of the pandemic, when we were all trying to just figure it out. But because of that, we just took our time with it, because it's it's going as fast as it could right now. Let's just take our time with every single line. And I'm proud of that role because I told myself with this role that when I got it, I was like, you know what? This one's for me. I was in a slump, and I was going through some drama and all that sort of stuff. And this role kind of became therapy for me, in the sense that I was just you know what? This is just for me. I'm not going to do it for anyone else. I don't care if it doesn't get awards or anything like that. This one's selfishly guilt-free just for me. And I made it mine, this is the first time I feel I stepped into a character, particularly for anime, where I've gone straight up balls to the walls, for it. And I think it shows. I think people enjoy my performance. I feel like I've always had a knack for like physical comedy, and you know, like Edamame gets like the shit kicked out of him throughout like every episode, like figuratively and literally, and playing with that and getting to play with that and explore that was just so satisfying. So it's the smaller things, like I said, where like I'll go or like, you know, like I'll make a noise or whatever, and it's so funny. And that's what makes me so proud of it. Is just I like fully physically envelop that character. Yeah, I would say by like a long country mile, that is the most proud I've been with any role.
It doesn't have to be the
Edamame.
played. Okay.
Getting my butt kicked like that, and feeling like a complete loser, and feeling underestimated, and trying to prove himself, and getting himself into trouble, and you know, like developing through just stumbling through life, and feeling like a great pretender. Yeah, Edamame all the way. Like he's like, I think that's part of the reason why I resonated with the character so much, or that I like really found my rhythm with the character, was because I could empathize with him. Don't ignore what you're good at. Don't ignore what you're good at. He keeps trying to fight it. He's like, every time he's just like, I'm done. You know, and as a result, he becomes kind of the butt of the joke. But the moment he owns it in the series, like people acknowledge him, people have fun with him, and he gets such a great confidence boost, and it's so heartwarming to see. But it's not just the con part, right? Like he follows his heart in terms of like what he knows is right and wrong, and he sticks by that, right? And sometimes he questions it, sometimes it's like tested. But at the end of the day, he sticks with what he values, and you know, like and follows his moral compass. And I think sticking to those principles is very important. I think that's like the biggest lesson I can probably take away from him. For me to get there, I have to tell you how it's affected me otherwise.
Let's go on this journey.
The moment you become an actor in anime changes for you, for better or for worse, because one, like you're so attuned to like performance that like you fixate on like the flaws and the brilliant moments of acting, and you're not really focused in on anything else but the performances. Two, you know the people who are involved with that, and you're like, oh my god, he sounds great at that role. Gosh, I need to work on that role. Blah blah blah. Right? Like I used to be normal. I used to like watch anime and be like, wow, that was an amazing episode. Now I'm just like, man, that was a killer performance, and the writing sucks. Right? Like that's, so it changes you. But it's interesting because being an anime actor, I think the best thing that I can say about it is that you acknowledge how difficult it is. And so like when you hear yourself in a performance and you're like, wow, like I did pretty well, you know that you earned it, right? It wasn't just because it's like yes, there are happy accidents, but you put a lot of like grit, you put a lot of elbow grease, you put a lot of heart and soul into it, and it comes out great. Like, you know you've earned it. So I think that's what's probably one of the most satisfying things about anime. And I think it kind of forces you to acknowledge yourself, right? In the beginning, I watched like the first time I watched Gargantia was like dubbed was at AX 2014. And they had it on the big screen. Most people who were there weren't there for Gargantia. They were there for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But we saw it, and I was like 3 rows from the front, and I was just watching myself, and I was in shell shock. I sat next to Tony Oliver and Xanthi, and Xanthi, like in between, like during the credit roll, was like punching my arm, being like, "Oh my god, it sounds so good," and I was just like, Like, I was shell shocked. She's like, breathe, Alan, breathe. Like, oh my goodness. Like, and I was like, what's happening? Am I dead? But yeah, like, cause like for the first time, I couldn't criticize myself. I couldn't hear that voice criticizing myself. You know, like, yeah, you know, you just go through insecurities and stuff like that. But it made me confront that voice for the first time. And it did sound good, you know, like, but I couldn't believe it because my mind couldn't believe it. And I think going through that was kind of like baptism by fire, but in a good way, where like it forces you to like sort of man up and just own your own art. So yeah. It changed. It used to be I couldn't like, okay, so it used to be like two things. It used to be, one, if I didn't get cast in it, I don't want to watch it because it's like, oh man, I don't want to see the thing that I didn't get to be a part of. And secondly, it's like, oh man, I don't want to hear myself. That's weird. Like, that trips me out. Nowadays, it's fine. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, right? It doesn't get easier. You just get better at it. And so, like, you just come to terms with yourself. And nowadays, yeah, you know, like Kuroko's basketball just dropped. I'm in that playing Hyuga, and he speaks a lot, right? And I'm totally fine with it now. I've almost come full circle to the point where I can watch anime and just enjoy it again, rather than like look and pick out for like key moments that I should steal for myself, right? Like, I don't need that anymore. I know who I am. I know what I'm about, right? And I did, you know, like damn good work in it, so I can move on. Changing my perspective, I think. Auditions used to be scary. Auditions terrified me, for example, when I was younger, when I was newer at this. I had like a list of like 25 episodes or 25 auditions, and you would look at it and be like, all right, let's get started. And then your brain would just not do it because it's overwhelming because you've never done it. And what if you suck? And what if you suck through all of them? And what are you doing, right? Like, and just snowballs and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But I changed my perspective in the sense that, like, I didn't think of it as like the mountain to climb. It's not a hurdle for me. It's my job, right? And I have to find enjoyment in my job. Otherwise, why am I doing this? So I think the biggest thing for me was changing that perspective just slightly, being like, okay, this is no longer like me trying to judge myself and trying to prove myself. This is me seeing how much fun can I have with this, right? And I think it's the same thing with like in real time challenges in voiceover, when you're just not hitting the line, or like you're like, you know, you're performing and you're like, you have a time crunch, and like that stresses you out, right? But for me, I love that challenge. I've grown to learn, I've taught myself and grown to learn how to appreciate the challenge, because it pushes me that much more like into my craft. So the bigger the challenge, the bigger I will rise to meet it. And that in and of itself is kind of what fuels me now. But yeah, going back to the auditions thing, I love doing auditions. I love taking my time with it. I love figuring it out. And I love just at the end of the day thinking, yeah, that's the most fun I could have had with that character, and then letting it go, right? I don't think about the rejection. I don't think about that. My job is not to get the job. My job was to get the audition, you know? So once you have that in mind, you don't fear rejection as much, because it's not rejection. It's not rejection because you could have been great. You could have been great alongside like 10 other people, maybe 300 other people. They could have all been brilliant, but only one person gets to have the job. So, you know, out of that pile, they could have just chosen you for an arbitrary reason. So, you know, like, don't stress yourself out on whether like the reason why you didn't get the gig. Like, focus on like let that go and focus on what can I do next time to have even more fun with the next character. But yeah, perspective change, I think, is what helped me.
Mhm.
When I stopped resisting the process, but instead surrendered to it and accepted it and learned to live with it, that's when it became fun. I mean, it's much more complicated than that. You know, like I'm definitely like condensing it down, and it's not easy. It took a long time, but like, I mean, you know, you make change not drastically in one go. You have to remind yourself that it's about patience and it's about consistency. If you keep applying that mentality, eventually your body will remember it. Your brain is not hardwired. It's all software, right? You can program and deprogram yourself. And sometimes, you know, it's okay to get help for that. And I know I did. You know, I saw a therapist, and there's nothing shameful about that. I reached out to friends. You know, I spoke to my mom and you know, but I did whatever I could or what I had to make it work, because I knew that by the end of the day, that's where I had to be. That was like my goal. So I think this is because it's so broad, right? And it's just one of those things where it's like, it's so important, but it feels so neglected. And like, it feels like when you're in a bad spot, like, you know, you're in a bad spot, it can feel like there's no way out. It can feel impossible to get out of the rut that you're in. And I've been through that. And I had to, you know, like, I had to surrender to get help for that. And it took a long time, even while getting help, to get over that. And it's hard for me to ask, you know, of this from people, but like, I would say if like you're struggling throughout COVID or just, you know, whatever else in life, like, know that is not permanent. Know that it doesn't have to be permanent, and that you more than likely can do something about it, right? And like, you have to, like, it's important to keep your head up whatever way possible, right? Because you are able to survive it for like, if you are able to survive it, you know, asterisks, and you can like you can overcome it, even though it seems impossible, but like, hang in there. And yeah, you know, like, find something. Gosh, what do I even say about that? Find something that like you find fun to do, and do that. Like, screw, you know, like mounting to the pressures of just reality. Like, find something that you can do for yourself, and do it in small ways. Don't try to do, like, if you are trying to be productive out, like trying to out productive your, you know, like, whatever mental health you're in, take it slowly, you know, like, and be nice to yourself, because, you know, like, it's hard, right? And you're trying, and you have to acknowledge that. That's, I don't know. I feel like I'm talking to a very wide crowd and throwing a wide net, and I have no clue if that makes sense to everyone, but hopefully to someone out there that would make sense. Like, just take my word for it. Like, it will get better. Life is meant to be lived.
Yeah.
And you know, like, just hang in there.
A fun little ending. We have a few fun little questions. So the first one we're starting off with is, you were or are in Yashahime. Yes.
Correct.
The question we thought of, because we were discussing it before jumping on this call, was, are you Team Kikyo or Team Kagome?
Team Kagome all the way. Yeah. Team Kagome. Are you kidding me? Like, she's Kikyo 2.0. What are you talking about? Like, it's like, she's literally the reincarnation of Kikyo. Like,
well, someone should tell Inuyasha that, because I think he gets a little confused sometimes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he gets shot by an arrow by the love of his life, wakes up again, and the next moment, it's like, oh, she's gone, and then she suddenly reappears in what, episode 14 or something like that. I don't even know anymore. You know what's funny about that? I know I'm hijacking this conversation for Yashahime, but I just want to say it's interesting because I around 2002 2003 is when Adult Swim started their anime action block, which is when Inuyasha came to American broadcast, and I caught that way back when. It was like Saturdays from 11 to like 2 a.m. or something like that. But I would convince my parents to go to sleep early so that we can get to church early. I would make them go to sleep at 10:30, and then I would sneak out at 10:50 to go watch Inuyasha and all this other anime, because I loved it. So it's interesting because obviously I was younger back then, but I would just be by myself playing pretend with this whole entire new set of characters. And the funny thing is that when Kohaku came on, I loved that idea that he came back from the dead and he's now being controlled to go against the people he loves. Sango was my favorite character, by the way. So it's oh man, that idea in my head was so cool that I pretended to be I latched onto Kohaku when I was younger. And then 18 years or whatever later, I book Kohaku. So I don't know, I think that's pretty rare that you grow up pretending to be this character and now you're hired to be the same character. Right? And I'm oh my god, Sango is my sister. That's so weird. You know what I mean? It is trippy. But it's, oh my god, I still can't believe it. I'm Kohaku? What? You kidding me? Yeah. Team Kagome all the way. Are you kidding? Yeah.
That's such a fun story. Oh my gosh. I think our experience though watching it at that age is probably a lot different because my parents would record it for me so that I could watch it in the morning.
My mom was like, you gotta stop watching. Yeah. No, dude, Yu Yu Hakusho, actually because of that, Yu Yu Hakusho is my favorite anime of all time.
Same.
It's, what's interesting is that anime came out in 92 and they dubbed it in 2000. And I think because there's a differential between when the sub came out and the dub came out, something about that combination just makes it classic. You know what I mean? If it had a dub from 1992, god, that would have been atrocious, right? But because it came out when anime dubbing was starting to actually find its form and feet and stuff like that and legs, and the performances are brilliant. That it just locked it into time, and it's now just a classic anime. It doesn't age, right? And if it does age, you're just oh well, it's an anime from 92. Of course it is, right? But it's so good.
I will let Osama take the next one. Is she frozen, or am I frozen?
I thought she was just smiling this entire time, beaming from our conversation of Yu Yu Hakusho and Team Kagome versus Team Kikyo. Wait, who's Team Kikyo? Are any of you Team Kikyo?
No, we were just confused why it seemed like Inuyasha was for a little while. It's complicating, I guess. I get it, but
it's because he never got to get over her. I think that's my theory, is that he never got to get over her, and I think just being loyal and trying to be a good person, he tries to reconcile with Kikyo, despite the fact that she is now far removed from her moral self, because she's experienced death and that changes her. But yeah, I don't know, we can have a whole conversation of that, but I know we have very limited time now, so.
If you were in the Rise of the Shield hero universe, what type of hero would you want to be, and what type of powers would you pick?
Oh my goodness, I don't know. I mean, Rise of the Shield hero. I play such a weird. He's such a try-hard anime character. He takes his anime self too seriously. He's I'm Kirito, but I'm not Kirito, and he's just, and you're just why would you do that? He is the most level-headed of the three of them, right? Between what are their names? Moriyasu, it's Ren, and what's his face? I don't even. No, the guy with the bow. Whatever. No, like
Yeah.
like they're all jerks in their own right.
Mhm.
But if I had if I had a power, I mean, like I guess I would, like I try too hard to be too good of a person. So like I guess now Fumi, right? Like I would kind of go through a similar thing with him, but I wouldn't be dumb enough to be like, hey, I'd like to think if I were to go in now, right, and I'm not their age anymore, like I'm not like a teenager or even in my young 20s, like I would try to figure out stuff relatively quickly in terms of like, hey, let's try leveling up together and see what happens, right? Like the king says something, I'm calling bullshit on that. And I just want to see, you know, like, and so we'll see what happens. I may or may not know things that I'm not supposed to. Spoiler alerts, but yeah, no, I think, and like the power thing, I have no clue how to answer that one. But, I mean, obviously the sword is the best thing.
Yeah.
Who wants to have a shield? That one sucks. I guess in video games, I play the tank. I play defense a lot, so. That could make sense for me, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess now for me, yeah.
Yeah, no, I was gonna guess too. Not guess. I was gonna say, yeah, because I remember when the anime first came out, when I heard like Shiohiro in general, I was like, what can you do with the shield?
Right.
You know, like it piqued my curiosity, and then I started reading the manga and like watching the anime, and I was like, oh, I see.
Right. They get creative with it. I wish they would delve into it even more than they had. Like, I feel like I just wish there was more. I feel like I could be more creative if I designed that game or whatever with like what you could do with the shield. But
yeah,
I mean, how do you not do the Captain America thing? That's what I don't get. Like throwing your shield and that kind of is like your projectile.
We had also like one more fun little question too. We noticed you were also in Sword Art Online. So, if you had access to like the nerf gear, would you take the opportunity to put it on to go into the SEO world?
Oh man, I mean, knowing what happens in season 1, I like to grind in a good RPG, but I also don't play MMOs that often. You know what's funny is that actually, so my short answer would be probably not.
Yeah.
But it's not the reason why you're thinking. I'd want to try it out. But I know when a new console releases, not to get it. Like, don't buy into the hype. Because it's buggy. It's glitchy. Of course they're, of course it's gonna, like, suck. Right? Like, outside of maybe, like, the 5th or 6th generation of consoles, right? Which is, like, PS2 era or whatever. Yeah. Right? PS3 era and upwards, like, everything was so buggy. And, like, the first games that got released sucked.
Yeah.
And while Sword Art Online might be like the go-to fad thing, I would definitely not stand in line just to get a copy of that game. I would probably pick it up as like a Game of the Year edition once the DLC came out and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I wait because I'm like, well, I don't need to buy into the hype. And so, you know, like what was it, like day 1? That's when everyone got trapped, right? Then I would have been super smug, like in the real world, being like, "Oh, dude, crazy shit like this was gonna happen." Yeah. You know, so that's probably the reason why I wouldn't. But would I want to try it? Of course I would. I mean, like you get to cook by just pressing things and combining them. You can like it's a full virtual world where like you just live out a fantasy of whatever. Right? It wouldn't even be necessarily to beat the game. It would just be to like enjoy and indulge into my own action fantasies. Yeah. You know? So no. Is Heather frozen or I can't?
I think Heather is frozen.
You know what's funny is that like I was like locking eyes with like Heather's portion of the window and I was like, she gets me. And then I realized no, she's just frozen.
Something happened. I'm so sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
Now, adding on to that, since you mentioned if you could, like, obviously you wouldn't be like one of the first ones. I'm the same way too. Like, even with the new consoles coming out, like for the PS5 and like the new one for the Xbox, I was like, I'm a wait.
Yeah, they're gonna come out with the slim version anyway. Why
Yeah,
not?
exactly.
Right.
Like they always do that anyways, and so I'm just like, I'd rather just wait to be safe.
Yeah.
But let's say you did go in, like you mentioned, what would be the first thing you would think of, like
If
to
I got,
do?
let's say that I was somehow found myself with Nerve Gear, got in,
Yes.
and was part of the original SAO Survivor crowd.
Yes. What would be the first thing you would do?
The first thing I would do is, well, first of all, the first thing I would honestly do instead of playing the game would be to figure out a way to like contact the outside world. Right? Like, because someone had to have observed what was going on in the game in order for them to like figure it out. Like, I don't understand why they can't, right? Like, why you can't like hack into one of the nerve things and like figure out like what's going on in the world. I would try to figure that out because it's like, okay, this game is cool and all, but like, let's try to get out of here first. But if that didn't work, you know, like first thing I would probably do is grind, level up. I would stay in the back more often. I would stay in the back instead of in like the front of the pack because there's more data to be collected when you're in the back, and you can like kind of go through that and see. Granted, I feel like if I recall, like once the group beat like the boss in the dungeon, right? Like no one else gets to fight that boss. Right? Like they don't get that EXP. So, and I think, okay, honestly, that's a terrible game design thing. If only one person's allowed to beat the boss, and then everyone, like no one else gets that experience, then you're boned. How can you ever possibly get enough experience to leave? So I guess in that case I would try, but like, oh man, I would not have the gall or the stones that Kirito had to you know, to be in the forefront and just constantly just dominate. Like I'm not, like, I'm good at games. I'm not that crazy into them, and I don't have protagonist like plot armor. I don't have that. I know it. I'm not the main character of this game. I love playing the side characters.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, to add on to that too, like I would also probably be in the back collecting data, especially with the dungeons and stuff. Like I would also want to make sure, like, okay, so this one does this, all right, cool.
Right, yeah. I would almost probably become a shopkeep at that point. Right, like, because it's like, well, you're gonna need, like, because I'd rather play support than attack, just because that's a lot of pressure. And I don't know, like when I get to play like the berserker or whatever, right? Like the attacker, I tend to like lose focus, and I just spam a lot, and that's what gets me killed because I'm not minding my defense. Yeah, that's why I like to play methodically and like take my time with stuff. But sort of ain't about that life.
That is very true.